My name's Andy, and this is Andy's Tech. And yes, I've brought myself an Alienware. A cheap Alienware granted, but an Alienware all the same. It was actually listed as an old, slow gaming PC offers on Facebook Marketplace, and a bit of haggling and £150 later, and this piece of technological history, love it or hate it, is now mine. The guy even met me halfway. What a gent. Now, he wasn't far wrong. It is a slow and old gaming PC, and it's actually factory fresh specs wise, so it's kind of an untouched time capsule from gamers past. And hey, even the Romans were giving away statues at one point. I do feel for the previous owner though, as he even paid £50 to have the PC cleaned out and tested by some local company. Why they didn't offer some cheap, affordable upgrades, I don't know, as even an SSD would have saved the pain, and he probably would have just kept the PC instead of deciding it was junk. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So what did I get for £150 specs-wise? Now this is an Alienware R5 Aurora, and it is the base and first model of its design, so there's nothing fancy inside. We have an i7 6700 under the usual Dell tin can cooler. Actually, temps were surprisingly good. There's 8GB of DDR4 2133 MHz RAM in a dual channel. We've got an extra 2 slots free as well. There's a 1TB HDD. Yeah, that's the pain factor in the mix. This is the only drive included in the system, and it was the only drive included when new. Surprisingly, there's two GTX 950s in SLI, and this was a bonus, as I did a bit of research, and I assume there was only one when I looked up the spec sheet. There's a 430 watt Dell power supply, so it's no powerhouse by today's standards, but I honestly love the way this thing's built. There's so many cool little quirks, and it's really functional in its design. I mean, what other system does this? Yeah, that's just cool. There's a good selection of ports as well, with 4 USB 3 with 2 fast charging on the front, and we've even got USB-C on the rear, as well as your standard ports you would expect from a system of this age. We actually have M.2 support on this motherboard as well, and believe it or not, the power supply is actually non-proprietary, so there's definitely going to be some upgrades on the cards here. Now, usability, although painful in its current state, it's quite nostalgic. It's more usable now after it took 3 hours to defrag the HDD. Yeah, it's nice to see that chap's £50 was well spent there. It also had no drivers on the system, like none, apart from the Alienware and McAfee antivirus. So the only thing it had on the system was malware. But man, I'm glad we don't have to suffer HDDs anymore in this day and age. So that's kind of it as it stands. I thought we'd take a quick look first, but I guess we should just see if it can run any games in its current state. So first up, and a first for me, is CS2. I'm 1080p here. I went for the game default settings, which seems to be like medium or high. Now I've got nothing to compare this against, but we didn't have too bad of an experience here. We had an average of 95 FPS, 1% of 56 and 0.1% of about 26. Now I know I'm used to CSGO and getting incredibly high frame rates for like potato systems, but this doesn't seem too bad for me, and if I paid £150 for this PC to play CS2, I'd be quite happy. Next up we have the Stutterfest, that is Modern Warfare 2. Wait, that's not right. Yeah, it was a stutterfest. We were limited with RAM here, as well as the... I really don't think it liked the 2 GPUs in SLI as well, but we were definitely RAM limited, and some HDD factor thrown in there. Basic preset with FSR on balanced. We had an average FPS of 57, which wasn't too bad, but the 1% were like 5 and the 0.1% were 3. So Modern Warfare 2 really not happy. And we'll move on to something now that's even more demanding, Cyberpunk 2077, and yeah, it's really not happy. I had the HDD mode enabled on this as well. I went for 1080p again. Mainly because that's the general resolution that everyone plays stuff at these days. Plus I have a 32-inch monitor and playing at 720p. It's just painful. Everything low here, lowest of the low, with FSR 2.1 on balanced again. And yeah, we couldn't even get 30 FPS, and the 1% were just terrible. Actually, the in-game benchmark, we did achieve an average of 30 FPS, but as you can see in the actual game, it's really not happy. So I thought I'd throw a couple of games at it as it is. Now, I was going to leave the PC here as it stands and do an upgrade video, but I really couldn't just leave it at that. So I'm going to throw a couple of cheeky upgrades at it, and we'll jump back in and see if it's improved anything. Now, by cheeky upgrades, I mean that I've removed one of the GTX 950s from SLI, so it now is running a single GTX 950. I've also overclocked it with 250 MHz on the memory and 100 MHz on the core, just to help it along that little bit. I've also removed the 8GB of RAM and just temporarily slapped in this 16GB kit of 2400 MHz Corsair RAM running CL16. It's not great RAM, but this board does actually support 2400 MHz, so we'll be getting slightly faster speed as well as the extra RAM capacity. So they're the cheeky upgrades. Let's jump back into COD, Modern Warfare 2, and see if things have improved somewhat. Now that's a lot better. We're well above 60 FPS now on an average, mid 70s, 73, 74. With the 1% hovering around 44, 45, and the 0.1% in the teens. The frame time graph has smoothed out a lot as well, and yeah, you can sort of see we're using just under 9 gigs of RAM now, so we were sort of a gig short. The system wanted that gig and just couldn't find it, hence the stutter fest. So yeah, that's actually not a bad experience, I would say, considering the specs of this system. And we are still running on that HDD. You know, we're running a 2GB card here as well, plus 60 FPS average. I'm really impressed with that actually, and I think that overclock helped a lot as well. And we're still hovering around 97, 99% usage, so the card is being fully utilised here. Back in Cyberpunk arse now, and it's not made a massive difference. Okay, we've gained a couple of average FPS, and the 1% have smoothened out a bit, if you call 13, 12 FPS smooth. The 0.1% are still pretty terrible, hovering around 2. It's still not what I'd call a playable experience in Cyberpunk. I mean, we could go like pain levels of FSR, but it's just not worth it. I mean, we're using near 9.5 gigs of RAM now, so it did definitely need that RAM, but just the rest of the system just isn't powerful enough to give us a better experience. And yeah, I mean, I was playing along quite happily, and yeah, then this happened. And to be honest, on that note, I think that'll bring us to the end of the video. So thank you for watching, taking a look at this system here today. I've got some plans for this system. I think I'm going to do a separate review on the GTX 950, just to see what it can do in like the latest esports titles and all that jazz. And I'm also going to do an upgrade video I'm going to try and upgrade the system for the same as I purchased it for, try and bring it up to a better standard and see what we can get out of it, really, because it's got potential. And it's a really cool little case. I like the case. I like the look of the system. So yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for all the support as always. If you've not subscribed, please consider doing that. Please leave a like and a comment down below as always. I love what you guys have to say, and I also really appreciate it. Thank you for watching again as always. Take care. God bless, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.